Hey there guys, welcome to Arrow Cross Plays. This is kind of a thoughts-based video. I felt like putting this together. It's kind of a collaboration of ideas that I've thought about. This is kind of a midpoint video, and it's the idea of the talking point of, was Knack a success or a failure? Without giving too much away, because I wanted to put most of this in the review, I kind of wanted this to be a subsection video, which is kind of like a medium point, like an integer that goes in between the Knack and Knack 2 review. So that kind of acts as a transitional polarity shift from the first to the second game, if that makes sense. Financially, the Knack series was never going to be a AAA title to start with, I would say that. It's an interesting character, I think, the Knack dynamic. You have a kind of ancient relic dude, I guess, who can harness the power of ancient relics, or this ancient technology, so to speak, these items that he can combine with different elements, such as ice, iron, and there's a bunch of others that I just can't remember off the top of my head. But he was never going to be a quintessential platform icon, say in the same way that Crash Bandicoot or maybe Sonic the Hedgehog, even though I'd say Sonic the Hedgehog is a side-scroller as well, but it kind of falls into the same category. Or say like the Mega Man series, it was never going to be a AAA title, especially when you look at the financial aspects. Japan Studios did develop it, thought it was kind of interesting. Knack 2 did make some significant changes, to an extent anyway. Not that I would consider it too much of a sequential improvement. When you're looking at what was essentially a tech demo to show off the performance enhancements and capabilities of the PlayStation 4 in 2013, so about 4 years ago, you're looking at the idea that, okay, they've decided to make a sequel to this. I tried to go into this as unbiased and as open-minded as possible to hopefully enjoy the game for what it is, and without giving too much away, thus far, it's a retread to an extent. It does take elements of the old game and kind of throws them back in there, but it does add a few twists on the premise of the game. You know, taking the boss battles into consideration and various other things. There's actually a plot this time, unlike the last game where there wasn't really much cohesion at the time. It was just, oh, the professor discovered these ancient relics and now here he is. Here's Knack. Ta-da! It's not like that this time. Knack actually has a purpose. It focuses more on Lucas this time and his uncle Ryder, who was in the first one, who saved, I think, Katrina at the end of the first game. You discover that Ryder made it out alive. But when you look at things financially, as I said, Knack was never going to be more than a AAA title. He was always going to be lower tier, experimental, indie platformer, if you will. I felt that Knack was a welcomed addition to that, as there aren't that many really solid platformers. Because for the bare bones story from the first Knack, I think it did hold something there. I think there was something for everyone. It could be enjoyed. Now, when I did 5 things Knack 2 must have, without going too much into it, I did mention several subject matters. 5 of them, to be exact, hence the name 5 things Knack 2 must have. It wouldn't make sense if it was 6 things or 4 things or 1 thing or 400 things. It wouldn't make sense. So I picked 5 major things, and it seems to have covered most of them with some degree of competency, so I have to applaud that. And looking back on that video, there were a fair amount of dislikes to the video. Now, I'm not sure if that was a personal thing, like they just didn't like me or my take on the game, or they just didn't like the fact that there was a Knack sequel coming. With the lack of platformers that the PlayStation 4 has put out recently, other than independent platformers, if you want to call them that, indie games as they call it, I'm using quotation marks, you guys can't see that, such as Inside and Limbo, going back a few years with Limbo, and even Typo Man to some degree. Independent platformers that have a spin on the traditional format. Plus, as it's a puzzle platformer, it has puzzle elements, therefore it's interesting to see how the puzzles come together, but it does give you hints and optional extras. Now, at the point of this, I have not quite finished Knack 2, hence why the review is taking longer than I expected, and I do apologise, hence why I'm making this kind of info-based video to kind of give you guys some cohesion while this is going on. I enjoyed the first Knack more than the second, and I think it's that surprise first-time element. When you delve into a game for the first time, you get that feeling that can never be replaced. The first time I played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, for example, a game that, yes, it was broken as all hell, but I enjoyed that because it reminded me of the core fundamentals of skating games, and for bare-boned or as broken as it might have seemed at the time, and then obviously with patches and new characters like the Ninja Turtles and so on and so forth, with the addition of those characteristics, it helped build the game to a new level, I thought. So when playing it, I was like, holy crap, this is what they're trying to go for with a next-gen Tony Hawk game. And yes, when you break it down, the game wasn't that good, subjectively. You know, I try and look at games from a different perspective sometimes, try and put a spin on it so that people can kind of think, hang on a sec, this game I used to think was an okay title. Actually, it's not bad. It's gone up from being okay to meh, you know, I'll play it more than once. And that's how I try to progress reviews. I try and talk about them from different perspectives. And that's why I'm one of the advocates for Knack. I feel that I'm one of very few people that actually enjoyed the game series, and hence why I'm talking to you guys now. Well, obviously not talking to you, it's kind of weird when you think about it. But I digress. Knack has been fairly well received. It's an average game, so it was never going to be an immensely successful franchise. Thus far, who knows, there might be an Act 3, I don't want to jump ahead. Knack, I think, was successful to an extent. I think it sold enough copies to be deemed a success. I don't think it was a complete failure. There are some games that were overpriced or overproduced and they didn't sell well. Knack's price tag kind of hints at, okay, this game is a little pricey for what it is. Not that it's really expensive or anything. But looking at the core fundamentals of the story, the plot, the gaming mechanics, and all these things considered, which will be mentioned in the review. Apologise to keep plugging the review, but it's a work in progress at the moment, and it's working out of schedule, apologise. But all those things aside, and working from a basis of, okay, Knack to Knack 2, without too much of a comparison, but more looking at the overall transition, I think it was a success. Now, I could be wrong, maybe this is just me, but looking at the success levels, it has increased. It's not a case of, okay, this game was an okay title and then it's going to sell millions and millions and millions of copies. No, you'll probably find Knack 2 has a core fan base. The first Knack had a solid fan base. I would check back on the live streams of the PlayStation 4 and there were people that were still streaming this game maybe 2 or 3 years after its release. Now, for a game that's considered a quote-unquote collectathon, it's one of those games that you can kind of get into, but you might not finish in one run. I'm still playing through it in sections because it can be tiresome at times. I feel it does drain on you. So hopefully I'm giving you guys some other opinions that I may have forgot to mention in the review, hence why I'm doing it now. The enemy lineup is a lot better, the story narrative is a bit more coherent, we kind of have a lore now, we have a backstory to what was going on, and I just feel that Knack was not a failure. I feel that it was a game that many will dislike. I think it's an average game, and unless you're a platforming fanatic such as myself, you probably won't like this game too much. But sometimes it's nice to get other opinions, so if you guys have anything to say about Knack, positive, negative, or just plain indifferent, I'd like to hear from you guys, because I'd like to put together some sort of discourse on this. This would be quite cool. So to kind of summate this without being too much of a ramble, I guess, if I cut certain bits out and hopefully sweeten it a bit and hopefully make it alright. This cluster of a video, I guess, is supposed to be the idea that I don't think Knack was a failure. That's the point I'm presenting. I think Knack was successful. I haven't finished forming my entire opinion on the second Knack yet. I'm still working on that. But from a core standpoint, I think it did improve on what it had to, and it did make a difference in platforming. I don't think it was a revolution, but I think it was a slight nudge in the right direction. Let me know what you guys think. I'll catch you next time.